Alright, I have a serious topic that I want to talk to you guys about today. Bar size. It is so important that you guys are riding the right size bars because it is going to make such a huge impact on your riding, more than you honestly know. So before we dive into today's video and I give you guys all the juicy details on how important it is and why it's so important to ride the right size bars, I'm going to get my session on. What's up? That was a sick session. Got some of the locals, get some clips too, so that made it even better. But now let's get into the nitty gritty and find out why it is so important to ride the right size bars. So for starters, the reason that we want to have the right size bars is because if our bars are too tall for us, when we do tricks like briflips and buttercups or any overhead trick for that matter, it's going to make it so much harder if our bars are a little bit longer. So real quick, let's give an example. Let's picture a circle. I'm going to draw a circle on the screen right here. Let's put a dot in the middle. Then we're going to talk about the radius. If the radius is say 24 inches, which is how tall my bars are, then that circle will go around 24 inches all the way around. Now let's say your bars are 28 inches tall. You're gonna have an extra 4 inches, which means that circle is gonna be a lot bigger as it goes around. So the reason it's gonna make it a lot easier when we're having shorter bars when doing briflips and buttercups or any overhead trick for that matter is because our scooter is actually going less distance, which means it can travel around quicker and a lot faster and a lot more efficient realistically. Now the next thing I want to talk about is actually looping out. The taller your bars are, the easier it is to loop out. And it's really important that your bars actually match the deck size. So if your deck is super short and your bars are super tall, it's gonna make it really easy to loop out. So for example, I ride a 19.5 inch deck and my bars are 24 inches tall, which makes it a nice distance between my wheelbase to bar height to not actually loop out a lot. Now let's say I were to leave the bar stock at 28 inches tall. That would make the bar height so much taller, which would mean I'm sitting back a lot farther on my actual scooter. Because our scooter decks sit at a 83-degree head tube angle, that means their bars are actually tilting back towards our lap a little bit. So the taller the bars, they're gonna sit back into your lap, which means the farther they're gonna be leaning back, which means the easier it is to loop out. Now, another thing I wanna talk about is pumping and flowing. When your bars are a little bit too tall for you, or for this matter, too short for you, it can get really uncomfortable when pumping through the bowls. Let's picture this. Let's say you're like riding 20-inch tall bars and you're like 6 foot tall. Your back is gonna be broken by the time the session is over. So maybe ride them a little bit taller. Now vice versa, if you're a shorter rider and you're riding some stock 28 tall bars, probably gonna get chinned 1 or 2 times when you're pumping through the bowls. So for example, right here when we're pumping through the pump track, my bars are just barely coming up to my chest height at max. This way right here keeps me from chinning my bars and from also having a broken back at the end of the session. Now let's talk about the width of our bars. It's going to be important that we have the right side width of our bars because it's going to determine how easy bar spins are, or really kicklesses or anything like that. So let's start talking about bar spins. Obviously the shorter width you're going to have on your bars is going to be much better because you're going to be able to spin the bars around without catching your hoodie or your t-shirt or just catching your hip in general. But before we cut our bars down way too short width-wise, maybe let's think about that for a second. At a certain point, when you cut your width down too short, it actually makes the scooter super hard to control. If you guys want to know what I'm talking about, try holding your scooter bars right here and then steering. The leverage of steering is going to be so much harder, especially when you're pumping and flowing or even doing like kicklesses or something like that. You're going to have no leverage to get your scooter actually around. Back when we used to ride the Razor scooters, they were like 14 inches wide, which made it so incredibly hard to actually steer. Now, talking about kicklesses and stuff like that, which are going to be a lot of leverage tricks, being able to have that extra width on the bars is going to make it much easier when it comes to actually getting the kickless around because you have the extra leverage there to whip it back. It's like the same idea of a breaker bar when you're working on a car. You use that breaker bar to give yourself a little more leverage just to get it turning, and then you can twist it off with a smaller ratchet. The same idea is going to go for the bars. the wider the bars, the more leverage you're gonna have when you're doing kicklesses and stuff like that. So a good balance is a good idea. So I wouldn't go 30 wide or anything crazy like that, but I would recommend doing bars in between, say, 20 to 22 inches wide. That's usually a good standard for most riders. As soon as you get below the 20-inch wide range, it starts to get a little bit tricky to control. And then same thing, when you start to get above 22 inches, you're gonna have to start worrying about catching your shirt when you're doing bar spins. Now I ride my bars at 24 inches wide. Just my personal preference. I like being able to have that extra leverage when doing tricks in the air and stuff. I used to ride some Youth Gone Wild bars that were like 26 inches wide, and I felt like I was really cool, but I was not cool. I just catch my bars on everything, which was really actually annoying. But it got me super dialed and able to finesse my bar spin, so 24 inches wide works perfectly for me, and I can still do kicklesses and stuff like that because it gives me that extra leverage to get the tricks around. So the reason we're actually even diving into this is because today during scooter lessons, I saw some other riders here mingling and riding around with super tall bars. Our Rapture bars, for example, come stock at 28 tall, so you guys can custom cut them to any size that you need. We want to be able to allow riders to custom to whatever size they want. But today, I saw a couple riders with Rapture bars riding around stock at 28 tall. Now, they're not the tallest riders by any means, so it makes it a little bit harder to try tricks like briflips or any overhead tricks. So what I did was I was like, hey, you want to ride my scooter for a little bit and see how it feels? And instantly, they were able to do some more tricks. For example, Jacob, I'm going to give him a good old shout out in today's video because he landed his first briflip. He was trying some briflips on his scooter, and I was like, that is so close. So I gave him a couple tips and pointers, and then he knocked out his first briflip just by riding my scooter because the bars were a little bit shorter, more tailored to his size. 24 tall, 28 tall, 28 tall. The size difference right there, about 4 inches, give or take. When you stand on them, how does it sit on your like waistline? Is it like really high or really tall or like short? Mine's like right below my belt, like probably like 3 inches below.
It's like,
oh, like almost belly button.
yeah.
What about yours, Jacob?
Belly button.
Oh, yeah. I'm just gonna probe you real quick, because you landed the briflip.
Yeah.
How did it feel when you switched to just like slightly shorter bars?
It felt like it was the size for me. Like, you know, it gave me a lot of air, you know? And
Yeah.
that motion and everything.
Let's now talk about how tall should your bars actually be. What I would recommend is having your bars about at your wrist length. So what I would do is I would stand on top of your scooter, put your scooter between your feet like this, dangle your arms down, and then see where your wrists lie. That's a good size. For me, my bars are 24 inches tall. Now, if you have some super freakishly long arms or some super freakishly short arms, this measurement method may not work for you. So what I would do is I would pick your waistline where your belt sits, and I would get your bars cut just below your belt height. If your bars are well above your belly button, that is probably too high for you, especially if you're gonna be trying to do some overhead tricks. Now, for a lot of street riders, they like the taller bars, but then they compensate with their deck size and they have a longer deck, so it makes it not feel like they're looping out when they're riding. As we were talking about a little bit earlier, it's so important that your deck size and your bar height is of the right ratio. If your bars are too long, you're gonna be looping out. If your bars are too short, your deck's gonna feel like a monster. Overall, the goal of this video is to explain how important it is to have a balanced scooter. But of course, being your bar height, that is the most important thing to having a balanced scooter. And with all that being said, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up there. Hopefully you guys now understand how important it is to have the right size bars. If you guys liked today's video, give me a big old thumbs up and smash that subscribe button. But before I leave you guys, if you guys do need any new scooter parts, head to RaptureProScooters.com. You guys can get your own bars. We'll custom tailor them to the size that you need, so you guys don't have to worry about the bar size. Now, if you guys don't know the size that you need, shoot us an email and we'll help you find out the exact size scooter that you need. But now on that note, before I start rambling anymore, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.